Good luck, teacher. Good luck, everyone. How's it going? We hope you're having a great day. And this is our presentation. Today, we will discuss about ethics of innovation. Arab will have 7 people in this team.
It's indisputable that innovation creates enormous values, but that values end up concentrated in very few hands. So today we will ask the question about justice, not about efficiency, of how should the fruits of innovation be distributed. First, we'll talk about the ethical approaches, and in our presentation today, we have two fundamental lessons for judging any distribution. First, the proceduralist judges by the process, which means that if the process is proper, then the outcome is just, even if we dislike it or not. And this also reflects that the means justifies the end. On the contrary, um, a consequentialist judges by the outcome, which means that the result of the outcome is what matters, irrespective of the legitimacy of the process. And this reflects the opposite: the ends justify the means. Now we talk about a theory for the standpoint and counterpoint used in our presentation. For standpoint, we choose the Rawlsian just distribution. This is Rawls' theory of justice as fairness, built on the basis of the veil of ignorance. So, what is the veil of ignorance? Imagine a person standing at an original position, and behind the veil, they don't know their position in the society. They can either be the elite one or the worse off one. So, if they have to choose pharaohs, rational people would choose three uh, main principles. The first one is the equal basic liberties, in which each person gets the most extensive scheme of basic rights, including speech, conscience, etc., compatible with the same liberties for all. The second one is the fair equality of opportunity, in which people with similar talents and motivation should have similar life change chances, irrespective of their social backgrounds or the class they were born into. And the third one is that the different principle in which is that the social and economic inequalities should only be permitted if it benefits the least advantaged members of the society. Now we move to the counterpoint, Nozick's libertarian critique. But before we talk about Nozick's perspective, we must first understand Locke's theory, because Locke's theory is the premises that Nozick's entire critique is built on. So first, Locke says that every person owes themselves their body and their labor, and by mixing your labor with unowned things, that becomes our property. And crucially, these property or these rights are pre-political, and therefore the state's only job is to protect them, not to redistribute them. And Nozick used these theory to build his uh, own. He said that there will be a redistribution issue because the redistribution of income violates liberty and property rights. Why is that? Well, because of his central argument states that liberty obsessed patterns. What of a fair pattern uh, people start from? Voluntary exchange between free individuals will inevitably disrupt it, and since free exchange violates nobody's rights, the resulting distribution must be just as well, which means that maintaining the different principle mentioned earlier requires constant interference with liberty, and that would create a paradox.
Before we go into it, we want to state our overall position clearly so that everything after this week, one argument gathered in 3 separate pieces. We agree that state redistribution is necessary, but how much we can actually defend narrows at the claim widens. Here is our 3 gun leaders. Gun 1, the fitness footing. We only compensate the verified transition cost that automation imposes. On this break worker, this is an externality, and even the liberation has to accept that when the cost fall on her body, we stay may step in. So this one we defend unconditionally, run true, strong but conditionally, because in innovation this is society product. Society and co-investor has a claim on residual gain through royalty, public equity, and progressive tax. We reason is that public risk and private reward has come apart. This sequence only hold when evidence that the reference gain the capture when tree. the most contested, a universal minimum income with but only in the form of common certified like Alaska, not a budget neutral from seen in Brazil or Indonesia, where it actually hurt that very poorest. And the key point at the bottom, this is one element, not three, is one text on the one platform. So when everyone say no sustainable tax on profit and everyone choose as assertive to share its profit, that's not a contradiction. So they are two different ones and the same later with certainty increasing as we climb.
Our argument is not that every profit from innovation should be taxed or shared with the public. We focus on the narrow issues. The transition costs created when the worker are displayed by the labor-saving innovations. State income redistribution is justified only when these costs can be clearly identified. Firms do not internalize them, and affected worker cannot manage them on their own. And under these conditions, private profit does not show the full net social benefit because some costs are paid by worker and the state. Our argument applies only when three conditions are present. The first one is the innovation must reduce the demand for identifiable worker or task. We must be able to connect the displacement to a specific labor saving change. Second, the adoption gap must be persistent. This is the difference from unemployment during a recession because our job may return when the economy recovers. However, when a new technology becomes widely used, the old tasks may disappear, so the worker need to learn new skills to find a jobs. And third, the firm are not legally or contractually required to pay the full adjustment cost caused by the displacement. Now let us explain the first mechanisms. Labor-saving innovation replace specific tasks when the technology become part of normal production. Demand for those tasks does not like ultimately return with the next business cycle, and the affected workers has specific skill, therefore lost the market value. This means that the re-entry require the retraining rather than simply waiting for recovery. However, retraining require money and time. Workers need to pay for costs, leave bed or work for a period or move to another location. At the same time, the displacement reduces the income needed to finance the changes. Workers therefore face a difficult cycle. They need resources to adapt, but loss of employment remove those resources. With that support, they enter lower paid or insecure employment instead of moving into the new job created by innovation. Therefore, even when innovation create new jobs overall, those jobs may not be immediately accessible to display worker if they require different skill, qualification, or location. Standing concept of the precariat explain why this adjustment is not ultimately temporary. The precariat include workers with unsustainable income, with job security and limited career progressions. Insecure work often provide neither the financial stability nor the time needed for retraining. As a result, re-employment does not always solve the adaptation problem. It can keep workers in a position where they remain unable to develop the skill required for better employment. Therefore, once innovation create the persistent rather than temporary transition costs, the next question is who who bear the specific cost of adjustment.
To answer that question, we need to examine how the costs of labor displacement are allocated. A firm adopts labor-saving innovation because it expects higher productivity and lower labor costs. If the innovation succeeds, the firm retains those savings. However, there are no legal or contractual obligation require the firm to finance the full adjustment. The related cost fall by default on other actor. Display worker lose income and pay for retraining, while the state finance temporary support and employment service. This is why broad private gain is not the same as net social benefit. Here, Roth rabbit gain refers specifically to the productivity gain and labor cost saving related by the restructuring. Net social benefit must also subtract the income losses, retraining expense, and public expenditure caused by the displacement. O'Connor fiscal crisis agreement explain why this cost shifting is structural rather than accidental. The firm retained the gain from private accumulation, while the state financed the social expense related by labor displacement. The state must support affected workers, but there are no automatic mechanism requiring the firm to repay the full cost. The public burden therefore does not act visible by itself. Raw provide a way to evaluate this distribution. We first apply fair equality of opportunity. Workers with similar ability and effort do not have comparable opportunity to retrain when access depend on personal saving, mobility, and time away from paid employment. The different principle provide a second test. The inequality created by innovation requires certification when the productivity gain do not improve the position of display and least advantaged worker. Nozick provide the main counter argument. If a firm develop its technology lawfully and worker enter a voluntary employment contract, the firm have a right to retain its legitimate return. We accept that lawful innovation return should be protected. However, a contract between a firm and its worker do not establish consent from taxpayer or public institution that later finance unemployment support and retraining. Voluntary exchange therefore do not fully resolve the first party cost problem. For this reason, we propose a target technology transition fund. It would apply only when displacement is verified, clearly connected to labor saving restructuring and not adequately addressed by the employer. The fund would finance temporary income support, job matching, and retraining. It is not a general take on innovation, and it does not claim that the public deserves a share of every innovation reward. That separate question concern who contribute to creating the innovation. Our argument is narrower. When a firm captures saving from labor displacement, it should share the verified transition costs caused by that decision.
Next, argument 2, producer justice. Fairness begins with equal process. Argument 1 asks the producer question not whether outcomes are equal, but whether required process recognition, contribution, and risk barrier. Our condition is contribution sensitive major input and risk reserve. Property recognition, the claim apply only when social input is essential for obtain strong exclusionary control when worker, tax payable, and public institutions receive little return. It does not modern profit or ownership. Next, reason one, social cooperation innovation is neither wholly public or wholly private. Innovation is social co-produced. So supply, cumulative knowledge, public research, educated labor, user data, infrastructure, and legal order, firms supply capital, absorb capitality, further research and development, coordinator, testing, and commercial risk. Thus, variation reduce the cost and uncertainty of private development. Firms convert them into market produce. Innovation is therefore in neither wholly public or wholly private. Local labor principle protect the firm contribution but cannot erase the claim of either individual contribution. Next, public risk and private record can became disconnected for reason 2, 3. So the shorten when public risk and private reward separate, tax paper financial basis research because its uncertainty, slow and different to approach. So public institutions observe failure from can select successful knowledge, commercial is a U pattern, and exclusive control of site. This contribution require distinction, social and design, while privately, appropriate return may include royalty, public equity, process taxation, worker profit sharing, affordable asset condition, and reinvestment. Firms still retain normal return, compensation for commercial risk, and temporary innovation profits.
So the next part we would deeply discussed about a universal minimum income, also known as a guaranteed income provided to all individuals regardless of employment status. And in this part, we will have two dimensions. The first one is consequentialism and proceduralism. First of all, let's talk about a consequentialism perspective. So, we believe an ethical system must result in the greatest happiness for the greatest number. So, by implementing UMI, we maximize society benefit and mitigate self-poverty. Because the final outcome protect human well-being, the policy is fully justified. So, in short, that it is the ends justify the means, and consequentialism act as a live against technological unemployment and also a moral obligation, not act of voluntary. So, in today's fast-changing world, UMI act as a crucial life vest against the technological unemployment. So, as Sun explained, the technological advancement are rapidly reducing employment opportunities, especially for low-skilled workers. So, to evaluate this crisis, we rely on John Rawls' different principle. So Rawls argued that inequalities are only justifiable if they benefit the least advantaged members of society. So right now, the automation does not benefit displaced workers; it leaves them behind. Therefore, UMI must be implemented to balance this widening inequity. So, in us as a necessary safety net, preventing those displaced by technological from falling into poverty and economic suffering. And this brings us to our final conclusion. UMI is not an act of voluntary charity, it is a strict moral obligation. So, historically, human labor was the primary way individuals contributed to society and earned a living. But today, technological advancement have only reduced the necessity of human labor in many industries, so therefore it simply doesn't make sense to tell people work hard when the economy no longer needs human workers in the same way. That's why we must to ensure that the fruit of innovation benefit for everyone, not just privileged few tech monopolies. And UMI is the ethical, logical, and practical step forward.
So far, we have seen the argument for the universal minimum income. Now, let's look at the other side. This is the producer list view, one of the strongest argument against Yumi. The main idea is simple. Producer list do not ask is the final result equal or failed. They ask a different question. How did people get there well in the first place? For them, what matter in the fair process, not a fair result. If you can earn your money in the fat and honest way, then it is yours, even if some people earn up richer than others. And this is where you may has a problem. You may care about the result. It give everyone is a minimum income. To explain this idea, we will look at two thinkers, John Locke and his theory of property, and proper Nozick, who take look idea even further. Let's start with the John Locke. His main idea is that property comes from labor, from the work you do. Look at the top town, the best case, the person does the work. That would bring a result. You did because they make it with their out effort. The result belongs to them. In short, you out that you work for. It is what makes ownership fair. Now look at the bottom row. How you may work. You may take the result of one person work through tasks and give it to other people. People who did not do that work. For look, this break the link between work and ownership. The person who earned the money lose part of it, and it goes to someone who did not make it. So in look at view, Yumi is very hard to accept. The rapper Nozick take look at it and pause it further. You can see his argument here. A fair society is one where people get their wealth through free choice, working, trading, and buying the selling by their own will. For Nozick, its very step is free and honest. The result is already fair. There is no need to change it. This is the problem with Yumi. Any redistribution like Yumi break property right and economic freedom because it takes money from some people by force to give to other. Nozick would say this is almost like forcing someone to work for a stranger. So the conclusion is clear. The propositist will reject Yumi. It see Yumi as an unfair way to limit economic freedom. Justice is about the process, not about the controlling the result.
Now, I'd like to introduce our case study, which is Finland. Finland is widely recognized as one of the world's leading innovation economies, but it also places a strong emphasis on ensuring that the benefits of innovation are shared across society rather than being concentrated among large corporations or highly skilled workers. Today, I'll discuss two policies that demonstrate how Finland distributes these benefits: the Service Central for Continuous Learning and Employment, and Finland's free education policy. The first policy is the Service Central for Continuous Learning and Employment. It is a Finnish government agency established in 2021. The program is funded through the government's tax revenue with an annual budget of 40 million euros. Rather than providing training itself, the program analyzes labor market data to identify future skill shortages and funds the training programs delivered by universities and vocational education providers. For example, as AI and automation change the labor market, the program supports the courses that help workers develop digital and technological skills. It also helps workers whose jobs have been displaced by technology gain new skills and transition into emerging industries. The second policy is Finland's free education system. Education is provided free of tuition from pre-primary education through higher education, with 98% of funding coming from public expenditure. This means that children, regardless of their family income or social economic background, have equal access to high quality education. From, from a proceduralist perspective, this policy promotes fairness by ensuring that everyone starts with the same education opportunities. Instead of guaranteeing equal outcomes, Finland creates a fair process where access to education is available to all. Together, these two policies show that Finland distributes the benefits of innovation in two ways: by helping today's workers adapt through lifelong learning, or by giving future generations equal opportunity through free education.
Can I ask a curiosity site inside Google Village where it remains a 12-year monthly commitment, a 2-year stream, a lump sum out control. After 2 years, the long term has about 25% and more non-agriculture enterprise and roughly 50 higher net enterprise revenue with no net fail in the total labor supply was shift towards self-employment. The short-term stream generate weaker effect despite comparable capital received that the date. This is set a credit security horizon expand strategy, but the results are early rural, able and finance. They do not establish national tax incident and general equity effect. Alaska is producially distinctive because its annual payment derived from commonly owned oil wells. Research find only significant decline in arbitrary employed and a 1.8% point rise in part-time work, consistent with income and local demand effect offsetting each other. Yet the variable payment is normally below 7% of average income is but a common access device, not a special level UMI. The workspace provides a distributive stress test under budget neutral replay. Existing programs were about 60% more effective on average at reducing extreme poverty. Many protect declined household in Brazil and Indonesia with low. Rule therefore reject formality equality that worsen the least advantage. However, they are static. First round, microcurriculum behavior response, general equivalent effect, and honorative task design are omitted, and poverty healthcare can cancel if at loose below the line. The legitimate conclude concern this replacement architecture is not a forecast. That's very UMI must fail.
So, in conclusion, it is undeniable that innovation contributes to the growth of society, but together with it, inequality is also an inherent component of any innovation cycle. Through both consequentialist and proceduralist reasoning above, along with stated arguments and case study, it can be concluded that the fruits of innovation should be reallocated to ensure that it remains compatible with social justice and human dignity. Wise approaches of redistribution is necessary for the fruits of innovation to be shared fairly, and it can fulfill its purposes of advancing human welfare collectively rather than selectively.